Welcome, everybody. I'm Brian O'Leary, Executive Director of the Book Industry Study Group, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar on strengthening the publisher-to-author relationship with a royalty statement portal, which is brought to us through the support of and participation of two important industry professionals from Fidel. Our speakers today include Paul Gore, who's Executive Vice President and General Manager of Professional Services at Fidel. He's responsible for a lot of things, driving product direction, ensuring successful rights and royalties implementation for Fidel's clients. And many of those clients are leaders in their respective industries. Prior to joining Fidel, joining the company, he was CIO at Fidel's client, Chronicle Books, and he brings decades of publishing experience from Hachette and Time Warner Book Group. He's also happily a member of the BISG board, having started in July, and is one of three industry service partner representatives on the board. Greg Guest is Vice President of Product Management Cloud at Fidel. He's responsible for driving Fidel's rights cloud product strategies and growing the company's presence in the digital rights management arena. He's an experienced thought leader on the complex topic of media production and content licensing. And he's previously worked at Marvel Entertainment, which is, I think everybody recognizes, as one of the leaders in character licensing and merchandising. He's also worked at HSI Productions, which is an award-winning commercial production company. He has over 20 years of experience in marketing and technology, and his work includes jobs as communications manager at Voice in Plimpton, as well as director of software at Braveline Technology. Paul and Greg, welcome, and I turn the floor over to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Happy to present to the group today. Okay. Thank you, Greg. So first, a little bit of a word about Fidel and what we do at Fidel. Fidel provides rights, content permissions, and royalty platforms, to many different industries, but primarily Fidel does serve a number of the largest publishers globally in terms of rights, royalties, royalty accounting platforms in both education and trade, as well as other top 20 publishers around the world. Fidel's been working and has had technology leadership in rights and royalty management for over 17 years. Publishing is one of the major industries that Fidel supports, it's a major part of Fidel's product offerings, whether it's from rights and royalty management, rights sales, rights and permissions, as well as what we'll be talking about today, which is author statement portal. So Fidel's software solutions includes a number of aspects specifically for publishers. So first is the bread and butter, the rights management and royalty accounting. This is where Fidel's platform is really a rights-first platform for royalties, where the platform manages rights as well as all the necessary calculations, royalty statement production, royalty accounting that's necessary to serve the authors. It's a completely robust platform that that manages every aspect of this. What Fidel also manages is rights sales, and in rights sales, Fidel's taken its experience working with the largest licensors in the world outside of publishing, as well as large sub-rights licensing within publishing in order to manage the rights sales process and tracking the inbound revenue from the sales of the rights themselves. So it's truly an end-to-end solution, all centered on rights. Now, in the last 5 years, Fidel also released a rights and permissioning platform, which manages all the rights of the content within the products, otherwise known as books, so that if you're clearing rights, say for an education product that's got thousands of assets within it, the rights and permissioning aspect allows that to happen at a very large scale at some of the largest publishers. And Ultimately, one of the ways to get that this all gets rendered for the authors who we're ultimately serving here is it's through our statement portal, which provides transparency and visibility to the information produced in the other areas. So go ahead, Greg. So some aspects, and we've talked about this in other contexts, but some of the business landscape for publishers today includes things like an expectation of immediate online service, ease of communications. Authors are expecting to be able to interact with their publishers as easily as they can with other financial institutions and others. There is all kinds of digital transformation taking place within publishing. There's new content formats, there's new consumption models, and new distribution models of content. So it's not just about books anymore. It's really about everything that you can make given the rights that you have to the content. Also, there are new forms of competition for publishers. So businesses that are not your traditional publishers are producing products that also leverage rights, also pay royalties, but they're competing for the eyeballs, they're competing for the attention of the readers and the consumers of the publishing products. And then ultimately, there's a really large push for better transparency with the partners and the talent to make sure that, as the industry is transforming, that your authors are feeling that that their publishers are really being fully transparent with them and, managing their assets as well as possible. So some of the goals to improving author relations, of course, are timely, accurate payments. Make sure people are getting paid what they're supposed to when they're supposed to. Enabling direct one-to-one communication with your authors without pushing them to pick up the phone. Give them direct access to the information wherever possible. Next is provide transparency. So, which means proper management and communication of the royalty statements themselves. And then ultimately modernize the author experience in order to meet today's expectations. Okay. So what's required for this? Simple, modern tool for authors, agents, publisher-author relation teams, all alike. Give direct electronic access to statement and payment information. Provide statement details in multiple different formats, depending on what arrangements you've made with the authors. Provide full transparency to the way royalties are calculated, and a secure place for communications between the authors and your customer relation teams. And ultimately also have a place for targeted messages that are going to go to your audience, your author audience themselves. So I'm going to hand it over to Greg Guest, who's going to introduce Fidel's statement portal and bring us through how we're solving these problems.
All right, great. Thank you, Paul. Thanks to Brian and BISG for having us here today. Really excited to be here to share with you all a glimpse into our latest exciting product to support our publishing customers, which is called Statement Portal. It builds on really decades of work that we've been doing with publishers, as Paul mentioned, to help streamline and automate publisher operations from the very beginning of the process, including production planning and rights clearance, through to the royalty sales tabulation and royalty calculation, all the way through to the statement generation and statement delivery to authors. And so Statement Portal really puts an exclamation point on that process by connecting and solidifying that relationship between the publisher and all those back-end operations and their constituency, their main constituency, which is their authors and their content creators. And as Paul mentioned, in today's world, there's a major proliferation of content distribution models, content types, and content's always been important, but it's perhaps more important than ever now. So it's very important for publishers to be able to attract talent and to maintain that talent and keep them engaged with that publisher in order to help grow their business through successful content. So we recognize that at Fidel, that's a really important facet of the publishing industry today, is helping publishers service their authors. And that's really why we built Statement Portal. And it provides secure access in a very easy way to author statements online in an online portal in a kind of modern UI, easy to use site where they can get information on demand. And it happens to be built on our Rights Cloud framework, which is our tried and true, proven with customers, multi-tenant cloud-based framework that we deployed Statement Portal on. So it already comes right out of the gate with really sophisticated features around user management, administration, security, and all that stuff. But now it adds basically very author-facing functionality for viewing statements, as well as you're going to see in the demo, a lot of great tools for author relations folks at the publishers to be able to service their authors as well. So as I mentioned, it's really all about providing on-demand royalty statements to authors in a very easy and secure way online. And that includes, all the kind of latest authentication methodologies from password protection, security layers, two-factor authentication, things like that, to provide secure access for authors to the information and to keep the information secured. It also includes things like communications, automated communications with authors to let them know when there's information available or a new statement available, so that they always know when these things are available, and then they can get it right away online. Or maybe they're busy and they need to wait a little bit to get it, later that day or later that week. They can get it on demand, basically whenever their schedule dictates it's best for them to view and ingest that information from the Statement Portal. So it really strengthens that relationship between the publisher and author by making the author feel like, hey, we're getting instantaneous communications, up-to-date communications about information when it's provided. We're getting greater transparency because I can go in at any time and see my statements. And then the publisher really is getting that increased operational efficiency by automating some of these tasks. So the statements are automatically flowing into the Statement Portal from their royalty or payment system. The communications to authors are automatically going out to authors. So there's no more kind of, stuffing envelopes and mailing statements, or even emailing statements or emailing authors when their statements are available. All that's done in an automated, streamlined way through the Statement Portal. So what features does it include right out of the box? Quite a number of exciting features. First and foremost, it's that electronic delivery of the royalty statements in digital formats, and they can be in any format. Most of our customers deliver that in a PDF format, but you can deliver PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, Word documents, any type of format or any type of detailed statement or summarized statement that you want to can be provided to authors through the portal, as well as really any other documents that might go with that statement. For example, a tax document or some sort of other memorandum or acknowledgement or authorization or something like that. Gives publishers a place where they can publish not only the statement itself, but any supporting documentation that needs to go with that statement. And then from the author perspective, it's fully self-service. So they can come in at any time and download those digital documents at any time on their schedule on demand. It also supports an agent model. So if you have one agent that's managing multiple payees or multiple authors, that agent can be tied to multiple statements in the system and have access to view multiple statements across multiple authors. So they can log in at any time they need to view, download those author statements, distribute them to their clients, et cetera, and manage those relationships on their own in a very autonomous way. So not only solidifying that relationship with authors, but also with author agents who are a critical piece of the puzzle. Above and beyond the statement delivery, the portal also offers a way for publishers to communicate in general with authors and agents And that could be from a marketing perspective. So sending out kind of blanket marketing notifications about successes at the company or how well the publisher did this quarter. It might be, communications about new products or new brands or new imprints that they've got. Just really a way to keep in front of the authors so that they can keep that bond solidified by constantly communicating and keeping that author engaged with their company. That's going to help them retain that talent and retain that relationship over time. Now, in addition to kind of general marketing notifications, it also provides the capability for publishers to send very targeted notifications, very personalized notifications to groups of authors, to specific business units or imprints of authors, or even to one very specific author. So you might have some authors that are, require additional management, and you can personally communicate notifications or documents to those authors to provide that customer service and support. So multifaceted ways in which the publisher can stay in contact with their authors through automated notifications, marketing communications, and personalized messaging. Now, in addition to all that functionality that comes with the portal, we also at Fidel have a very strong service-oriented part of our business, which Paul largely drives a big part of that. And we have a white glove service around statement portal that really can get you up and running on this product in very short time. Really, all you have to do is give us your statements in some sort of secured way through an FTP site or something like that. For example, if you give us the statements, you tell us who the user accounts are for your authors, we can have that set up really like within the span of a week. I think you can be up and running and delivering statements out to your authors. So it's not hard to get it set up. It's not hard to stand that up, and we're there to help you with that every step of the way. Of course, as you'll see, and as I'll talk about in the demo, deeper integrations and automation can be done with enterprise royalty systems and payment systems, but initial import of your data is very, very easy to do. Okay, so I'm going to do a demonstration for you today so you can really get a full view of everything that's possible in Statement Portal, both from the administrator side and from the author side. So I'm going to be logging in as kind of two different personas today. Thomas, who is our author relations individual at our fictional publishing company, Booker Publishing. So he's maybe author relations or the site administrator or royalty statement person, et cetera, whoever is responsible for dealing with the statements and the interaction with the authors. And then we have our author persona, Barbara Wright, who is an author working for Booker Publishing and eagerly awaiting her next statement. So I'm going to start with administration, and I'm logged in here as Thomas, as you can see here into the statement portal. And as an administrator or author relations person, I can see statements for all the authors that I manage. So you can see, I do see Barbara Wright here, who's our example author, but I also see statements for Bo Riley and Jane Dunn and others that are in my statement list here. So I have that view because I'm an administrator of all statements. Now, I can segregate that by business units. So you see that Thomas actually belongs to a couple different business units here. So maybe you have different imprints or different brands and you segregate those authors and those administrative features by brand. You can segregate those here. So maybe he's an administrator for Booker Education as well as Booker for Kids. And those are two separate imprints with separate groups of authors that he manages. So, and in that case, you're limited to see only the authors within the business unit that you're working in. So he's in his main business unit here, Booker Publishing. You can see all the authors here. He can also see all the payees that he works with here under the payee list with contact information. So if he needs to contact a particular person, if he needs to contact Barbara Wright, he can very easily get to Barbara's contact information and reach out to her. So it offers a tool where it's very easy to get to information about my authors or about my payees as well. Now, let's say Barbara has a new statement that's available. How does Thomas get that into the system? Well, there's really two ways that statements come into the system. One is through an open API library, which can be integrated with a royalty system or with a payment system or ERP system, et cetera, so that when you generate those statements in an external system, because statement portal is not a, it's not a royalty calculation system. It's not a statement generation system. It's just a portal to publish the statements. So the statements typically get generated out of an external system. Obviously, Fidel does have a best-in-class royalty calculation system, which this is very well integrated with. But statement portal is agnostic as to the source. You can be using any royalty engine or any source of those statements. So one way to get those in is to actually create an integration to the API, open API library in statement portal, and feed those statements into the system on a regular basis. And that includes the payee data that you see here as well, because your source of truth for your payees probably is your ERP system or your payment system. So you can feed that information in as well. And that can all be automated seamlessly through the APIs that are available in the system. And that's something that our white glove services can help you with setting up as well, if that's the direction you want to go. Now, the second way is that it also provides the ability to do what we call a file drop, which allows you to basically just drop a file in. So if you don't have access to API connectivity or don't have the ability to connect up to APIs, you can use a similar format of data and just simply drop it in here. So basically it's CSV driven. So if I have a CSV file, I can populate it with the statement data that I want to drop into the system. And so, for example, I might have a CSV here of Barbara's statement data, and I can just really drag that and drop that right in. And I can see that that's now been stored successfully. It was successfully ingested. I can see that there was only one statement line in this, but there was a success of one on there. And so it's really that easy to populate a CSV file with some data and load it into the system. And I can do that with my party data, which is my payee information, address, contact information. I can do that with my statement data. Statement data, as opposed to documents, is really the header data that's associated to the statement. So if I go back over the statement list for a second, it's really the data that you see here in this line, which is a statement identifier, statement period, the schedule of the statement, the start date, the end date, the payee, and the total amount of the statement. And that's pretty much the totality of the statement data itself that we're storing in the system. Beyond that, all the statement details are in the actual statement document that gets associated to that statement data. And so if I come back over to the file drop for a second, I can also upload the documents that are tied to that statement data. So I can upload the PDFs or the Excel or Word documents that contain the actual statement. And we're going to see what that looks like when we log in as our author. So I dropped in some new statement data. What's going to happen then from Barbara's perspective is she's going to get a notification that she has a new statement in her email. And so if I flip over to Barbara's email for a second, I can see that she has received that email. Here it is. You have a new statement available. It informs the author that she has a new statement. It gives her a little bit of information about the statement and what period it is, and a link to click on it. And when she clicks on that link, she can come right into the system here. She's prompted to log in because obviously from a security perspective, she has to provide her credentials in order to see that data. But once she does, it takes her right to that statement detail. And she can see the statement period. She can see the total amount here, $890, and the general information about this statement. You can see that she also received a notification in the system in her inbox here as well. So that notification goes both in system to her notification inbox as well as to her email. She can opt out of the email if she wants to, but most people probably want to get that email in their external email as well. So she can immediately know there's a statement available. She can log in, she can get to that statement, and then she can go to the Documents tab here and see the document and immediately download that document and open up that statement. So literally in the span of about 30 seconds, she can go from getting a notification to getting online and seeing the detail of that statement. And then she can print that out or download that or do whatever it is that she needs to do with that statement. Now, let's say that statement gets updated or another document gets added to that statement period. Once again, she'll get an automatic notification from the statement portal. So as that data comes into the system sends out an automated notification to her, and we can see it here in her inbox. She has an updated statement. This is to inform you that the following statement has been updated. Again, she gets a link to the statement. She can click on it, go right to that statement, and look at the documents. And now she can see that there's an additional document that's available there. And then she can, again, download that document. Maybe it's a tax form. So now they've uploaded an additional tax form. She can download that document and immediately see that information and have that information available at her fingertips. So again, super easy as a publisher to provide additional supporting documentation to an author, have that author understand when it comes into the system and how they can navigate back easily and see that. Now, she can also get general information about all her statements on her dashboard, which shows some high-level statistics about her royalty performance, including the latest statement period from her latest statement, her average statement amount across all her statements, which is interesting to see, her total royalties since the date of her first statement that she received. And then she can see the last 6 statements that are available and kind of how she's performing over that period. As you can see, she's doing quite well. Her royalties are, for the most part, improving every period. So that's great for her. And she can see which statement periods performed the best. So relatively speaking, so she can see her top performing statements. You can see here Q1 20 was her top performing quarter with 2,200 in royalties for that particular quarter. So she can see kind of when she had her best sales. So that gives her a good view, like high level view overall of statistics and how she's doing. If she wants to look for a specific statement, then she can just simply go into her statement list and see all her statements. And so she can see all her statements here. She doesn't have that many, so it's pretty easy to see them all here, but she can also search. If she has many, she can search for specific ones. And let's say, for example, she knows there was one over $900, she can come in here and search by amount range for everything over $900, or maybe she's searching for a certain date range or a certain period. Let's say she's looking for one that she knows was over 900, she can search and there's all her statements over $900. And oh yeah, it was this one for 990 that she was remembering and she wanted to find. And now that she's found it in this list, she doesn't have to go into the details like I showed you before in order to download those documents. She can do it right from here, right on this line. So super easy to come in, search for a statement, find it, click on this icon, download the statement, open it up, get that statement, validate whatever the question was she was looking for, print that out, save that off, do whatever she needs to do to it. So again, really simple from an author perspective to know when I have a new statement, when I have an updated statement, how I'm doing on all my statements overall, and how I can find specifically a specific statement that I'm looking for and get access to a specific statement. Now, there's a few other things Barbara can do here in the system that I want to highlight. One is she can validate her contact information. So if she clicks into her party information here, she can look at the address. You'll notice that it's kind of grayed out. That's because typically, as I mentioned before, the source of truth for this data is typically an ERP system or a payment system, and the data is coming from that system. So any update to her data really needs to happen in that external system and flow back into the statement portal. If it doesn't get updated in the payment system, it's not going to reflect the proper information for payment. So, in the sense of if they're mailing a check to her, for example, that check's not going to go to the new address if it doesn't get updated in the source system. So that's why it's not just editable here. But what she can do is she can click the submit address change icon and submit an address change. So she can submit in an address change and say, I've moved, new home address, and I want you to update my data for this new address. And then she can submit that address change in. And when she does, she'll get a notification that her address change has been submitted. She'll also get an email in her email inbox that an address change was submitted. So that's a security factor to make sure she knows that somebody submitted an address request change. And similarly and that address request is going to go off to the administrator. I'm going to show you that in a minute, what the administrator sees from the other side for that. But she can also do that with banking information. So she can submit ACH information here for direct deposit or wire transfer information as well. Same thing applies. That ultimately needs to get updated in an external system. So it goes in as a request to update that. and then the administrator will process that request, and then the information will feed back into the portal. And eventually Barbara will get a notice saying your request has been processed and your information will be updated shortly. So again, really critical communication aspect here between publisher and author to allow authors to feel like, hey, it's very easy for me to give my latest address and my latest banking information to the publisher to make sure that I'm getting the communications and the payments that I should be getting at the right places that I should be getting them. So that's going to make the author feel good, again, that you're servicing them in that way. Last thing I wanted to mention, last couple of things I wanted to mention for Barbara here is that she also, I mentioned notifications, that she can get notifications here. So in addition to those automated statement notifications, I mentioned marketing notifications. So she might get a notification that Booker has won a big publishing award. And again, this is a way for the publisher to let their authors know that, hey, we're a great company to be working with. We're happy, we value you. You're making us a success, so we want to make you a success. In this case, it happens to be a top book award for Barbara's book. So she's super excited to get that announcement in her inbox and feeling good about Booker Publishing when she sees that. The last thing I wanted to point out was that most of our publishers are global. And the authors may not be primarily English speaking. So we do support multi-language in the portal. So under the author's profile, user profile, they can come in, and in addition to changing their security, doing their passwords, changing their security questions, they can set up two-factor authentication, as I mentioned earlier. I also mentioned the opt-out of email. So this is where she can opt out of those email notifications. But she can also set her primary language. So for example, let's say she's French speaking. She wants to see everything in French. She can very easily switch to French and everything will be translated to French here. As you can see, everything is translated to French, little hiccup there, but everything's now translated to French for her and she can, read everything in her language. So that's really important for global publishers who, again, are servicing authors all over the world. They want them to know that, hey, just because we're, in the US or whatever, doesn't mean everything is English centric. We understand that you want to see things in your local language or your preferred language. And so we give her that capability. So that's kind of everything Barbara can do in the portal. As you saw, very easy access to statements, easy access to update her information. Let's flip back over now to the administrator view here and take a look at a few other things from the administrator side that I showed here. So the first thing is you can see that address change request came in. So as an administrator, I got a notification that I've received a new address change request from one of my authors. And to navigate it, I can click here and that will take me right to that address change request. And you can see the information that, that Barbara submitted for her new home address. And now again, I can take that information and I can go update that in my payment system. And when I do, I can set that to processed. And now when I set that to processed and save it, Barbara will actually get a notification that that has been processed and your information has been updated. So it closes that loop, makes Barbara feel secure that her address has been updated. And as soon as that information feeds back into the portal from the source system, she'll see that updated address on her party profile when she logs in. So the administrator can also see all the requests that they're dealing with from a request list here. So whether it's an address change or a document submission or ACH information submission, banking information, they can kind of manage it here. It's not a real heavy workflow tool. It's really more of kind of just a task list of things they need to process. And again, that typically happens to be processed outside of the system. So it allows them to track that here and close that loop with the author once they've made that change. Now, I also mentioned that notification capabilities. So, and you saw that marketing notification that I issued from Booker Publishing. That's very easy to do as well. I can come in here under notifications. You can see there's my Booker Wins Top Book Award notification that I had sent out previously and all the other notifications I've sent out. It's very easy for me to send out a new notification. I can just open up a new notification. I can say, I want this to go out tomorrow, for example. I can specify whether I want it to be in system only or whether I also want it to go to everybody's email inbox. So maybe it's not so important, I don't want to clog their email, or maybe it is important, I want to send it to their email. I can then target different groups of users. So it's beginning with either admins. So maybe it's an internal notification to all my admins, or maybe it's a message to all my standard users as well. And then I can segregate my audience by business units. So I mentioned Thomas belongs to multiple business units. So I can send it to any specific imprint or brand that I want to target, or a specific role. So maybe it's just my standard users versus external users, or maybe it's specific users, all users, or a very specific group of authors that I can select, or maybe even just Barbara. I can send one just to Barbara if I want to, and do a specific communication to her. And I'm going to do all users just because I'm going to do a blanket marketing message here. And maybe I have, a new Zoom webinar we're doing for authors, and I want to make everybody aware of that. And maybe I have some pre-canned marketing language that's already been approved that I can just drop in from my email or whatever. And then I can do some kind of light HTML formatting here. I can add a little link for my RSVP here. I can attach a document in if I need to. Maybe there's a brochure I want to attach in, or maybe I'm communicating specific documents to a specific author. So I can do attachments to these as well. And then I can publish that announcement, and it will get published. I'll see it here in my notifications list, new webinar for authors, and that will go out, and the authors will all get that notification in their inbox and in their email if they haven't opted out of their email. So again, really good ways to continue to strengthen that relationship between the publisher and the author, stay connected, stay communicating, keep the publisher, in the forefront of the author's mind as caring about them and providing top-notch service for them. There's one more thing I want to show, which it really helps in this regard. And that's if you have an author calling you up on the phone or something and saying, hey, this is great. I love seeing my statements instantly on demand, but I'm seeing something that I don't understand, or I think there's something wrong with my statement. Can you help me? And in that case, it's a challenge sometimes for the publishers because they have to go kind of dig out the information, figure out what the author's looking at. Well, with the statement portal, Thomas, when he gets that call, he can say, sure, I'll help you with that, Barbara. And he can actually do what we call impersonating the user. So he can come in to impersonate that user, and he can search for the user he wants to impersonate, Barbara, and he can bring up Barbara's account. And then he can actually log into Barbara's account and see exactly what she's seeing as if he's logged in with her. But he can do it in a secure way that doesn't force him to say, hey, Barbara, give me your password, right? Or I'm going to reset your password to welcome 123, and you'll have to go through the trouble of redoing your password. Doesn't have to do any of that. He can just come in here and say, okay, let me help you, Barbara. Let me take a look. He can log in as Barbara. And instantly now you can see there's a little red icon up here. And you can see I left it in French. So he's literally seeing exactly what Barbara sees. So I hope he speaks French in this case, because he's seeing everything in French. And he can then see what she's seeing. He can go to the statements. He can see the statement. She said, I have a problem with the statement, that's 990 and it should be, it should be more or whatever. And then he can actually get access to that exact statement, download the PDF and take a look at the statement. He can say, hey, Barbara, I see what the issue is. Either explain to her what it means, or maybe there is a mistake, in which case he can say, I'm going to take care of that. We're going to update the statement, and you should see an updated statement come through shortly. And of course, when that updated statement does come through, she'll know instantly about it because she'll get a notification that it's been updated, and she can come back in and see the change. So once he's done, thank you, I'll take care of it, Barbara. He can hang up with her. He can exit this mode, go back to his job, and it takes very little time for him to do that and service her. And Barbara gets off the phone and goes, wow, that was so easy. I got the help I needed, and my statement's going to get updated. So, she feels great about the interaction there. So that's what I had prepared to show you today. And that pretty much really gives you a view of everything pretty much that's available in Statement Portal today, from both an administrator and an author perspective. Again, it's really all about improving the author relations, solidifying that relationship between the two, keeping that communication constant and personalized, which really is going to make the author happy. And then first and foremost, the delivery of those statements in a very easy, transparent way. So the author always feels like they have access, on demand to their information when they want it, and that it's accurate and transparent and accessible. And then from the publisher perspective, that operational efficiency to be able to automate that process of statement delivery, automate the communications around the statements, easily communicate marketing information and personalized information to them, manage requests like address changes and banking information changes, and provide service and support, on the phone or via email by having easy access to those author user accounts through the portal. And so really benefits all around for both sides of the coin, for the author and the publisher. If you want to check it out, you can check out Statement Portal free for 45 days. So we'd love to have you check it out. And like I said, you really can be ready to deliver statements to authors in less than a week. So if you're interested in finding out more, contact us at solutions@fidel.com, and we'll get you set up on that. I think we have time for some questions. So I'll turn it back over to Brian, and he can see if there's any good questions from the group. I'm sure there are.
Thank you. Yeah, we have several questions, and if folks who are on the call want to add any, best place to do it is in the Q&A box that's part of the control bar, typically on the bottom of your screen. But you can also add it to chat if you're less comfortable with the Q&A box, and we'll try and track those. The first question I had for you, Greg, was do you have to use, I think you covered this, but do you have to use Fidel's royalty system to get statements into this portal?
Yeah, good question. I think I did mention that before. The APIs that are available in the system are open APIs, so you can connect them to any system. So no, the answer is no. You don't have to be using Fidel's royalty system. You can connect up those APIs to any royalty system to feed that royalty data in. Or as you saw in the demo, you can also drop data in right from a CSV, so you don't need to connect to any royalty system if you want to go that route as well. So it's really wide open on how you want to source the information into it.
And I think the context for this question, can you load historic data into the statement portal? Because we're always starting from the middle of something. All relationships have a history. So, I mean, is it possible to kind of create that history in the portal?
Yeah, it's actually very easy to do so because it's the same process. So you can just import that data. And again, that's something that our services team can really help with, getting that data, into the system. If you provide it, we can get it into the data, into the system. And again, really great way to impress your authors by giving them access to a bunch of historical data too, because typically that data might be harder for them to access or find if they haven't kept records, or at the publisher for sure. If you need to go out and dig out 5 years worth of statements, that could be challenging. So so putting some historical data there, like you said, to kind of capture the history you have with an author can be very powerful. And again, very easy to do with this system to get it in there.
This more general question, but with respect to the white glove service, how complicated is the development? I mean, what's the typical process to go from, I haven't done anything to help my authors to implementing something that really is beneficial?
Yeah, good question. Somewhat depends on your organization and your, technology sophistication level of your technology infrastructure, right? So at some of our large publishers, they're looking to streamline operations by having a lot of integrations with other systems in their enterprise. So in that scenario, you need to build those integrations. And so the services team would build those integrations. And that's a little more complex than the other end of the spectrum, which is, I just want to get my data into the system, in which case it's extremely easy and simple. And there really are very minimal services to be able to say, like, okay, here's 2 years worth of my statements. Here's my authors, put it in the system. And in that scenario, the services team can literally ingest that into the system, in a couple of days, assuming that the data is all intact and correct, that there's no kind of data massaging that needs to be done. But again, it's really, because the nature of it is that it's not really data driven, it's really document driven in a way. Most publishers have their statements generated. So once you kind of extrapolate the minimal required data that you need for those, which again is really just what period is it, what's the start date, what's the end date, what's the total, right? And then the documents, it's very easy to get those in and be up and running in a very short time frame. So 2 answers there. One is, If you're just looking to get up and running and then import data every quarter into the system through a CSV, very minimal services necessary for that. If you're looking to integrate it and connect it up to your ERP system and your royalty system to automate it that way, then you have some work to do on the services side.
The another question is that your use cases were kind of publisher on one side, author on the second. But what about the role of agents? Because I imagine in a number of cases, agents have a primary role in managing the communication with an author.
Yeah, very true. And there's all different kinds of agent relationships, right? Different flavors of it too. You know, some are very hands-off agents, some actually are the conduit of the statements to the authors. Some are actually the payees, right? And actually pay the authors. So there's all kinds of different setups there. What we do is, we can service any of those types of setups because the agent themselves might be a payee and receive a statement, in which case they would receive their own statements. The agent can have access to multiple author statements. So an agent can manage multiple authors and log in and manage all their authors. So similar to the way that my administrator was able to see multiple different author statements in their statement list, an agent would see the authors that they're assigned to, and you can make those associations between the agent user account and the payees so that they have access to those payees. That's actually useful in other scenarios as well, where you might have estates or descendants or things like that managing payees as well. So it's just kind of a flexible way to allow one user to manage multiple payees at a time. And then they can, offload those statements, deliver them to authors, provide that information to their constituents, however they need to. That's it for today. I suspect in the future where we'll go with the product, we'll be looking to even be more robust when it comes to those agent relationships, because that is an important part of the ecosystem.
Thanks, that's really helpful. And I imagine that thinking through just agents represent specific works, not always just authors. So it's got to introduce a certain complexity.
Yeah, there's a complexity there, which we want to make sure we fully understand before we tackle it. And this is only really version 2 of the product that's out now, so it's really our latest innovation, and we're going to continue to evolve it. There's a lot of great things already planned in the future roadmap for it. One of them is agent management like that, as you said, because it might be title specific. The other thing that we're hearing requirements for is, agents managing their own agents, right? So you might have an agency, you might have multiple agents in that agency that need access to the system. And it's not really the publisher that manages those users, it's really the agency that manages those users. So how do you provision them with a layer of administration to be able to do that user management for their own agency?
It's a good thing you have Paul Gore and Greg Guest.
We fit together well, Paul and I, for sure. And we've been working together since back in the Chronicle days. So I
imagine. It's more a general question about how often I think this comes out of your example that you used of an author asking a publisher for clarity on a particular statement. I imagine when you do something like this, you uncover data quality issues. I mean, is that a common thing? And what should a publisher, for example, be thinking about as they move forward, if they start to open this portal? Do you expect a kind of an early rush of questions, or is it business as usual?
Well, yes and no, I think. There will be more accessibility. However, again, in the kind of early iteration of this product, we're really providing only the statement that they're provided with today, right? However, they're being provided with that statement. So there's not really any additional data being revealed at this point. So if there's a data issue there, it's there today, and then it's going to be there tomorrow in the statement portal, right? It's just going to be displayed in a different format and through a different means. However, there will be more eyeballs on it potentially and more accessibility. So it could bring to light errors that beforehand were not seen. That really becomes more of a royalty calculation question, right? Of then, because then you're going back to your source to figure out, well, why is there an error in my data? Is it a royalty rate error? Is it a sales unit error? Is it a SKU error? And I think where we'll go with Statement Portal is we really would like to be able to provide some more drill down data into things like that, like SKU level sales, units, rates, things like that. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of complexity there. So, and there's a lot of sensitivity there as well from the publisher side. So we have to make sure that as we move forward in revealing that data, we're doing it in a very kind of consistent and uniform way. As you probably also know, every publisher has their own set of data they work with. So that's another challenge for us, is how do we unify the data sources on a common product platform when people might have very customized data sets that they're using. You mentioned Marvel before, for example. Marvel has very specific style guides that apply to their products of what character family it's in, things like that, that another publisher wouldn't necessarily have, but yet it's key to their royalty rates, whether it's the Spider-Man family or the X-Men family. So, little iterations like that become tricky from a data processing perspective when you're trying to create a product that works for everybody in the market.
Yeah, that's an area where BISG's Rights Committee has been focusing a fair amount of time to look at both the taxonomy, how people talk about rights, as well as how we might report it. And we have found that complexity in terms of royalty, rights and royalties, payments and statements.
Yeah.
So we might be able to work together on that in the future.
Yeah, I definitely sounds great. I have a lot of experience in that from that Marvel world, where the interesting thing about that is that rights and royalties really are tied together in a way that doesn't always exist at a more traditional publisher, because the rights you're getting for a particular character, a group of characters, is expressly tied to the rates that you're going to have for those characters, sometimes regardless of the product it's on, but also usually matrixed with the actual hard good or soft good that you're producing. So it's an interesting industry for sure.
Yeah, and our rights committee is very much geared to try and figure out how to create the system that will support transactions in the 21st century. So we have to be reasonably forward-looking, but it is part of what we're trying to think through. Just a couple of other questions. One is, I think you said this, that the ERP system is still primary for things like payments and address changes and the like. And that's not running through the portal. The portal is really just a view into the documentation, not just, but it's a view into the documentation that you have historically around your payments.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's again, because every publisher has a different system, a different process of making those payments, and calculating those royalties as well. So, at many of our customers, yeah, it's a system where our IPM suite for publishers, which is our royalty platform, is crunching the sales data and calculating the royalties and generating the statements. And then that statement data is then sent over to the Oracle ERP for processing. And then a payment is made out of the ERP system. And then, so we dovetail into that process to publish that statement, which ideally should match up with the payment that went out from the ERP. Now, one thing we can do, as I mentioned, is you can have supporting documents. So it's not just statement documents. You might have a remittance document as well that shows information about that payment. And I think that's an area we'll be looking to expand in the portal in future, as well as more information on payments themselves, when payments occurred, how much those payments were, where they were issued to.
Great. I'm sure that would be helpful. And I imagine that the planning that has to go into making sure that those drag and drop features work and assign the right documents to the right author or agent is probably, it's not necessarily intricate, but it's got to be carefully planned.
It has to be right. That's the thing. It can't, the minute you have an error, it's a big error, right? Because somebody's either seeing something they shouldn't, or they're, seeing an amount that's not the amount they're expecting, and those are both bad scenarios. So yeah, there's a lot of testing and double checking that goes into that. You're right, it's not that complicated. It's usually just matching up certain IDs, but it goes back to what you were saying about data. A big part of the data is the relational aspect of the data, from payee to statement to product, right? As opposed to just the actual calculation itself, but connecting those things together so that you're getting the right payee with the right statement with the right period.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the time today. I wanted to ask if you might be, or Fidel might be represented at Frankfurt, in case anyone who's on this call or interested in the topic has a chance to follow up in the next couple of weeks.
I'm not sure the answer, but Debbie, I think, is on the call. She could probably answer that.
That'd be great.
Unfortunately, Brian, this year we're not participating in Frankfurt, but we're more than happy to obviously be available online for any outreach or questions.
Great. And I think there's the slide that's been up for a little bit now on the solutions at fidel.com is a good email address to use.
Yes.
Great. Thank you again for making the time today, and to you and to Paul for both presenting the product suite and talking about some of the issues that and opportunities that kind of come about when you implement a system like this. We look forward to having you continue to participate in our rights webinars and rights series. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Brian. This was great. We'll see you soon.
Take care.